He stood with my parents at the porch light, holding the bag with my things like I was a tenant who forgot rent. He said, "You can sleep here tonight, Corinne, but in the morning I'm moving out." My mother whispered, "What did you do?" I lifted my shirt enough to show the fresh bandage under plastic wrap, where Trent's face looked up from my ribcage. Miles stared once, like at a small fire. Then he set the bag down and walked back to his truck. But it didn't start like that. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Corinne Vaughan, 32, a dental assistant at Dr. Elise Halloran's clinic. I wear clean scrubs, keep the tray neat, call insurance when patients forget their cards. It's a small town next to the river, where the bagel shop knows my usual, and the receptionist at the school knows my name because I did an oral health talk last spring. My husband, Miles Grayson, 34, works maintenance at the college. He fixes boilers and broken windows. He is quiet and steady. He never makes a scene. People like him because he does not ask for applause when he shows up with the right wrench. We got married 3 years ago in Paula's backyard. Paula is my mother. She cries when she sees white flowers, any kind. My father, Gordon, grilled chicken and forgot the vegetarian cousin. It was messy and low budget and sweet. My ex, Trent Mercer, did not come. Of course not. Trent was the old story I kept like a stone in a pocket. He'd been the drummer with a jawline and zero savings, the one who asked me to lie on the roof at 2 a.m. to count red lights on a tower. He left for Chicago. I stayed. That is supposed to be the end of it. We built routine. Saturday laundry, Tuesday spaghetti, Sunday hardware store. Miles likes lists, rubber bins, warranties. I like color. Nail polish lined like soldier bottles. A row of candles I never light. Screenshots of old photos for mood. We fit because he keeps me from flying off, and I keep him from sinking. The first small grievance was dullness. I say that now. Back then I called it balance. The clinic grew busy. I grew tired. He would ask, "Want to go to the diner?" I would say, "Let's order in." He would say, "You okay, Ren?" He calls me Ren. I would say, "I'm fine, just work." Then I would scroll Trent's band page without liking anything, just looking. He did not look back at me. I told myself that meant it was safe. Near the end of spring, my friend Lila sent a link for a flash tattoo event downtown. She said, "You should finally mark that roof night, something small." I said, "Like a star?" She laughed. "Or a face." Kidding. I said I was joking too, but the idea sat there. Not because I wanted Trent back. I do not like people who need couches to crash on. I wanted the past tidy, trapped in ink, owned. I thought a tattoo would make me the author again. Rehook came on a Wednesday. A patient's mother recognized me from high school and said, "Didn't you date the drummer who got arrested at a rally?" I smiled and said, "We all did dumb things." After she left, Elise asked over tuna salad, "You ever think about calling him?" I said, "No." But I did think about making him smaller than a memory. I thought a picture inside skin would finish the loop. That was the first step on the road I now pretend I didn't see. I booked the appointment for a Saturday. I told Miles I was getting something simple, a line drawing on my rib cage, because I wear scrubs, and I did not want the clinic parents to fuss. He said, "If you like it, I'll like it." That is the kind of man he is. It made me both grateful and annoyed. Grateful because it is easy, annoyed because it is easy. The artist, a woman named Faye with blue hair and gentle hands, asked for reference images. I showed her a photo I found on Trent's old page, a profile shot from a show in 2018, soft light on cheekbone, eyes closed like prayer. I heard my own voice say, "It's just meaningful." Faye nodded and said, "We can stylize it so it's not obvious." I said I wanted it obvious. She raised one eyebrow and said nothing else. I paid a deposit. During the week, small noises kept pushing me. A text from my sister Noelle. Remember when Trent took us to the lake in November? I still think that was crazy. I answered, yeah, I'm putting an end to that chapter. She sent clapping emojis. Noelle likes drama until it becomes work. My mother called to ask about garden soil. She said, Miles is a good man. I said, I know. She said, do you? I hung up and told myself she loves to worry. On Friday night, Miles made tacos and put my favorite hot sauce out. He said, you nervous? I said, about needles. Please. He smiled and touched my side. He said, where will it be? I said, ribs. He said, we should get matching something one day. I laughed at that because I like to act above corny things, even when I want them. He started a movie and fell asleep halfway. I watched the screen and felt a flicker of victory no one had promised me. Saturday at noon, I lay on the table, arms overhead, shirt lifted. Faye placed the stencil. She asked again if I was sure about the face. I said, it's my past. I can honor it and still love my present. She said, okay. The machine started. The sting pressed, then settled into a constant scratch. The lines formed, clean and sharp. Trent's closed eyes, the curve of his jaw, the hair swipe. It looked like a coin rubbed thin by fingers. I felt calm, like writing my name in a place only I owned. Faye wrapped it, gave me ointment and said, keep it covered tonight. I took a bathroom mirror photo, just a hint of it under plastic. I sent it to Lila with the caption, done. She replied, girl, that is a face. I said, so? She wrote, so don't be mad if Miles gets weird. I set the phone face down. People love to borrow my problems. They never pay them back. At home, Miles was fixing the loose towel rack. He asked, how did it go? I said, great. He reached for me, hands careful. I pulled my shirt up an inch, kept the wrap on, and said, no touching yet. He laughed. We ate leftovers. I thought I could wait a week, maybe 2, then show him when the red faded, tell a small clean story about closure. That was the plan. But I like applause. That's the rot at my core. After dinner, I posted to my private story, 20 people allowed. I wrote, honoring my before self, no questions. The angle hid the full picture, but not enough. People zoom and guess. Within an hour, a message came from someone I forgot I still had added, Trent himself. He wrote, that me? I stared at the bubble and felt alive in a way that made me mad at myself. I answered, it was a time. He wrote, wild. I did not respond. It was already too much. At 10, Miles came to the bedroom with tea. He said, want to watch that show with the chefs? I said I was tired. He brushed hair from my face. He said, tomorrow we can go to the lake if you want. He tries to give simple offers. It is his love language. Mine is to pretend they are small. Then the first leak, my cousin posted a laughing emoji on my story and wrote, that looks like a drummer I know. She tagged Noelle in a reply. Noelle sent me a string of skull emojis like we are back in high school. I muted my phone. I slept hot, rolling onto the sore side, waking to a sting that felt like judgment in my skin. Sunday morning in the kitchen, Miles made waffles. I lifted my arms to tie my hair. The wrap crinkled. He said, let me see. I faced him and lifted my shirt. I decided to tell the story in my polished voice. I said, it's my past. It's art. It reminds me that I lived. He stared. He did not blink much. He said, that is a face. I said, yes. He said, that is your ex. I said, he is not the point. He said, his face is the point. He set the spatula down and turned off the stove. He did not shout. He did not throw. He said, very low, you put another man on your body in our house. I said, it's my body. He nodded, as if marking inventory. He said, okay. He walked to the bedroom, took a small duffel, and started to pack. I followed, talking fast. I said, "It's not cheating. It's not even contact." He said, "It is a billboard." He zipped the bag. He called my parents and said, "I'm bringing Corinne over. I need space." At the door, he handed me my sweater, like I might forget the weather. He kept his voice even. He said, "You can sleep at your parents' tonight." I said, "You're overreacting." He said, "Maybe." The porch light turned our faces into paper masks. My mother asked what happened. I lifted the wrap a second time, as if evidence would argue for me. She put a hand to her mouth. My father took the bag. Miles said, "I'll pick up more of my things tomorrow." Then he left, the truck backing out slow, like he did not want to damage the garden. The family tribunal started before breakfast dishes cooled. My mother said, "Why would you do that?" I said, "Because I refuse to be erased." She said, "Erased from what?" I could not answer without sounding silly. My father made coffee too strong and said, "Miles is decent. Decent men require care." He talks like a manual. Noelle arrived in leggings and judgment. She said, "You did the most dramatic thing possible." I said, "It's just ink." She said, "It's a portrait." My Aunt Ruth called from the group chat. She said she saw my story because Noelle screenshotted it, like a raccoon with shiny trash. She said, "Sweetheart, removal is painful." That is her way of support. By noon, Miles's mother, Vivian, texted me a chilly paragraph about promises and respect. She said, "My son is humiliated." I typed, erased, typed again. Finally I wrote, "He is not humiliated, he is hurt." She replied, "Both can be true." I wanted to block her. I didn't. At work Monday, the first whispers started. Our receptionist, Denise, handed me the schedule and said, "Saw a little art on your story." I said, "I took it down." She said, "Internet never forgets." Elise, my boss, asked me to stay after. She said, "Your personal life is yours, but parents talk. Please be mindful of angles when you bend." She tried to make it a joke, but the note was real. I nodded like a student. During lunch, I hid in the supply closet and messaged Miles. "Can we talk tonight?" He read it and did not answer. The 3 grey dots came and disappeared, like he almost spoke, and then remembered a rule. Micro-escalation hit at 3, when a patient's teenage daughter whispered to her mom, too loud, "Is that the ex-guy tattoo?" The mother shushed her. I pretended the suction tube was loud enough to hide my face heating. After they left, Denise said, "Kids screenshot everything." I said I needed air and stood outside by the dumpster, crying without making any sound. It felt cleaner that way. That night, Miles texted, "I'll be by at 9 to get more clothes." I typed paragraphs about art and closure, then deleted them. When he arrived, my father was in the living room, arms crossed like a gate. Miles nodded to him. He did not look at me until I followed him to the bedroom. He moved calm, taking shirts, socks, the photo of us at Cedar Lake. He looked at that photo and said, "I thought that day was ours." I said, "It still is." He said, "Now it is a story you will tell to explain why you needed the past." His voice did not rise. That made it worse. I said, "Do you want me to cover it?" He said, "You wanted it seen. Don't lie to yourself now." He took the spare key off his ring and set it on my dresser. He said, "I'll sleep at Gordon's garage apartment for a few days. After that, we will set rules." I said, "What rules?" He said, "Real ones." He left. I hated that he could be the adult when I wanted him to throw something so I could call him cruel. The next day, gossip spread further. Lila messaged, "Miles blocked me." I wrote, "Why?" She said, "I guess I'm in your camp." I laughed with no humor and wrote, "There are no camps." But there were. The group chat, the clinic, the college where he worked. A neighbor, Irene, met me at the mailbox and said, "I always liked how quiet Miles is." Her voice held that soft knife tone. People make small talk like pulling thread from your sweater till it unravels. Wednesday night, I tried a grand gesture. I made a live video, private to the same 20, explaining that the tattoo was about me, not about men. I used words like autonomy and narrative. Someone saved it and sent it to Vivian. She called me at 11 and said, "You sound like a seminar. My son is flesh." I hung up and threw my phone onto the couch like it bit me. Thursday morning, Elise asked if I could cover the school dental booth next week. Then she sighed and said, "Actually, I'll send Kendra." I said, "Because of the tattoo?" She said, "Because of the quiet looks. I want to protect you." That is what bosses say when they do not want complaints. I went to the break room and stared at the microwave clock for 5 long minutes like it was a compass. By Friday, Miles sent another text. "I need the file box." That is how he speaks when he is angry, like a checklist. He came by at 6. I stood in the doorway and said, "I can schedule removal." He said, "Do you want to?" I opened my mouth and found no words that would fit. He nodded like I'd spoken anyway. He took the file box and left. Micro-escalation landed when Trent himself sent a voice message. His drawl, that old lazy confidence. He said, "It's wild you got that. I'm flattered. You still coming to shows?" I did not reply. I did not delete him. I told myself I was waiting for the right clever sentence, and then forgot that I had left the door open. The fallout spread to work like spilled bleach. On Monday, a parent complained that I was distracting. Elise called me into her office and said, "HR wants a note on file. It's not discipline, it's documentation." I said, "For a tattoo under my shirt?" She said, "For the environment." I nodded and tried not to cry because I hate being the woman who cries at work. On my break, I scrolled through a neighborhood forum where someone posted, "Is it appropriate for a healthcare worker to have a tattoo of another man's face?" They did not name me, but the comments turned like weather. One wrote that personal choice is personal. Another wrote that boundaries matter in marriage. A third posted a screenshot from my private story. So much for private. At lunch, Denise said, "Miles came by the clinic parking lot. He fixed the jam on the back door last month. He is nice." She waited, then added, "He looked tired." I wanted to snap at her, to say he always looks tired because he refuses caffeine after noon, but I kept my mouth shut. People were already building a story where I was the storm and he was the fence. That evening, I tried to do something good. I bought flowers and went to Gordon's garage apartment, where Miles had set up a neat little corner. Toolbox, folded shirts, a plant his mother insisted on. He opened the door. I said, "Can we talk?" He let me in. I sat on the edge of the futon and handed him the flowers. He did not take them. He said, "Keep those." I started my speech. I said, "This is about me honoring a time when I thought I was unlovable. It's about taking power back from a story that used to own me." He listened the way he listens to broken pipes. Patient, suspicious. He said, "If you needed power back, why did you choose his face?" I said, "Because that is what I lost." He rubbed his temple. He said, "You did not lose him. He left. You found me. You picked me. We got married. That is power." I said, "It is safety." He flinched a little, like the word struck. He said, "I will not be your safety while you worship danger." He stood, walked to the counter, and picked up a folder. He set it in my hands. Inside were photocopies, lease, bank, the title to the truck. He said, "This is the paperwork I started today." I felt the room tilt, just a little. He said, "We will separate the accounts. You can keep the house if you refinance. I'll pay my half of the mortgage until December. After that, it's yours or the bank's." I tried to stand up and my knee hit the futon frame. He did not touch my elbow to steady me. I missed his small, quiet kindness more than I expected, and that made me angry. I said, "You're punishing me." He said, I am protecting myself. He picked up his keys and set them down again. He said, "There will be no fighting, no yelling. We will tell our families on Sunday at the diner. I will be calm, you will be calm." I said, "I don't agree to that." He said, "You don't need to. I'm not asking permission." I went home and looked at myself in the mirror. I pressed a finger near the ink. It had started healing, tiny scabs like pepper. Trent's face looked softer now, less bright, more permanent. I tried to imagine putting a different face there, my own, a flower, a shape. It still looked like Trent. I put on a big sweatshirt and crawled into bed and hated my own mind for making me a museum I could not exit. Micro-escalation arrived at midnight. Noelle texted, "Vivian called Mom. She said Miles filed a change of mail form and updated beneficiaries at work." I wrote, "He did that?" She replied, "Yes." She said it was just prudent planning. I stared at prudent. It felt like a knife wrapped in cloth. Thursday, a child at the clinic asked, "Is that a famous person?" because he saw the edge of my bandage when I reached for gauze. His mother said, "Don't stare." I smiled like a puppet and said nothing. Friday, Elise held a staff meeting. She said, "Let's keep our social media quiet for a while." Everyone looked at me without looking. Later, Elise pulled me aside and said, "I'll cover your hours if you need time." I said, "I need money more than time." She nodded and gave me a sympathy granola bar I did not want. Sunday came fast. The diner smelled like bacon and old coffee. Miles arrived in a clean shirt. My parents sat on one side of the booth, his on the other. He said, "Thank you for coming." He looked at me, not unkind, just final. He said, "We are separating. It's not a debate. We will be respectful." Vivian made a small sound like steam. My mother reached for my hand under the table. I pulled away because I still wanted to believe I could handle this alone. He explained the accounts, the house, the truck, the timeline. He said, "There was no cheating." He looked at me. I nodded. He said, "There was disrespect." He stopped. No one spoke. Finally, Gordon said, "What do you need from us?" Miles said, "Nothing." He stood, left cash on the table and said, "I'll send the schedule." Then he looked at me and said, "There is a birthday dinner next month for my father. Please do not come." He walked out. The bell over the door sounded like a clap. The clean revenge came 2 weeks later, in front of both families and our closest friends, at Gordon's 60th birthday. I went because my father is loud about birthdays, and because I wanted to show I could be normal. I wore a high-neck dress, no hint of the tattoo, hair down like a curtain. People passed potato salad and skipped my chair with their eyes. After cake, Miles stood up and tapped his glass. He said, "I want to thank everyone for being here." He looked good, not in a new way, just a way I suddenly did not own. He said, "I also want to say something for clarity." He held a small folder. He loves his folders. He said, "There is gossip. There are screenshots. I won't argue on the internet." He put the folder down and took out a single page. He said, "I wrote a statement. I will read it, so I do not say more than I intend." He read slow. He said he loved me. He said we built a good home. He said people make choices sometimes that feel private but become public because marriage is public work. He said he would not name the tattoo. He said he would not judge my body. He said, "This part hurt like ice, that when trust is a wall, graffiti is not the same as art." People nodded like a sermon. Then he did the lawful part. He handed Gordon and Paula a printed schedule for dividing time at the house to gather his remaining belongings, with witnesses. He gave Vivian a copy of the budget showing the last 3 months of expenses he had paid and highlighted that he would continue through December. He gave Elise a letter I did not know about on official college letterhead, stating that he had removed himself from any maintenance requests at our clinic's strip mall to avoid contact. He set a copy on the table for me. It felt like a restraining order without lawyers. He said, There will be no shouting, no scenes. If anyone asks why we separated, tell them we grew in different directions and wish each other well. If anyone brings up the tattoo, say you don't discuss private art. He smiled a little. He said, "If that sounds rehearsed, it is. I practiced so I wouldn't speak from pain." He raised his glass to Gordon and sat down. Some people actually clapped. Not for me. That afternoon, I couldn't focus on the numbers. Every row of the spreadsheet looked like a timeline, every total a verdict. My hands hovered over the keyboard without typing. I kept seeing the sticky note in my mind. Call Lydia, she's fair. Like a small kindness that cut deeper than cruelty. Fairness was worse than anger. Fairness meant he had already forgiven me, quietly, without ceremony, and built a door for me to walk through while I was still shouting at the walls. Around noon, I walked outside and stood behind the building, near the loading dock. Trucks came and went, backing up with soft beeps that sounded almost polite. The smell of diesel mixed with wet cardboard. I watched a bird land on the railing, twitching its head as if it couldn't decide whether to stay. I thought of Miles again. How he never lingered when something was over. How he packed his piece as efficiently as his suitcase. Maybe he was always preparing for this, building small exits I never noticed. When I went back inside, Elise was talking with Clara near the copier. Their voices dropped when they saw me. Clara smiled the way people do when they've just erased a sentence. "Hey, how's your morning?" she asked. I said it was fine. The copier whirred between us, spitting out another reminder that machines never hesitate. I wanted to ask if she'd heard from Irene, if church people were still praying for me, or if they'd moved on to the next crisis. But I just nodded and went back to my desk. At 3, I finally called Lydia. Her voice was smooth, patient. She said she'd help with the refinancing, that Miles had already set up most of it, that all I needed was to sign. I asked if he'd said anything else. She paused for a second too long and said, "Just that you'd know what to do." I thanked her and hung up. The line clicked like a door closing softly. That evening, I sat in the driveway, engine off, headlights glowing against the garage door. The house looked too calm, the way places do when they're waiting to see who they belong to. Inside, I poured a glass of wine and stared at the note on the counter, the one about Lydia. I wanted to tear it up, but instead I pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a lighthouse. Maybe I wanted to remember the quietness of the gesture, the way love sometimes leaves as gently as it arrived. I took a shower, and the sound of water filled the room like static. I thought about Trent, his messages, his apologies that came too late, the way he always said we just understand each other better. It was never true. He only understood the parts of me that were useful to his own story. The rest he ignored, and I mistook that for intimacy. I stayed under the water until it ran cold, until the steam thinned into something honest. The next morning, I met my mother for breakfast at Irene's diner. She had already ordered her usual, black coffee, toast, and judgment served warm. "You look tired," she said. I said, "I'm fine." She sighed. "Miles was kind to you." I nodded. She stirred her coffee, even though she didn't take sugar. Sometimes kindness hurts more than cruelty. You can't fight it. You just sit in it. I said I knew. She looked at me like she doubted it. Outside, the air smelled like rain. My mother hugged me before leaving. Her coat smelled like cedar. When I got home, the answering machine light blinked. A message from the HR department said they wanted to check in about next steps. I erased it. Some bridges don't need to burn. They crumble on their own. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs and sat on the kitchen floor. The tile was cold, grounding. I opened the bottom drawer and found the envelope with the bank forms. I ran my finger along Miles's signature. Neat, deliberate, like everything he did. I wondered if he'd hesitated before writing it, if his pen had trembled even a little. Probably not. He was steady, even in the fall. I envied that. The next day at work, Elise called me into her office. You've been distracted, she said. I told her I was handling things. She leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Sometimes handling things means admitting you can't. I said I'd finish the quarterly report early. She nodded but didn't look convinced. As I walked out, I noticed a faint smudge on the glass door where someone had pushed it open too hard. It looked like a ghost of a handprint. After work, I drove to the river, the same one Miles and I used to walk beside when we first moved here. The water was low, exposing a line of smooth stones. I picked one up, rubbed the surface until my thumb hurt, then threw it in. The splash was small, but it sounded final. Across the bank, a heron stood motionless, waiting for something patient enough to come close. I watched it until it took flight, slow, deliberate, wings slicing the air without noise. I whispered, "Congratulations" to him, and hated myself for how small my voice sounded. Days blurred after that. People stopped checking in, which was both a relief and a punishment. Silence replaced pity. I started cooking again. Simple things, rice and eggs, things that didn't ask for attention. I rearranged the living room twice, then moved everything back. At night, I listened to the house creak and imagined Miles sleeping somewhere else, maybe already dreaming of someone kinder, someone who wouldn't mistake mockery for strength. One evening, Irene called. "We missed you at service," she said. I told her I wasn't feeling well. She hesitated, then added, "I hope you know he still speaks well of you." I almost laughed. "Of course he does," I said. "He always speaks well of everyone." After we hung up, I sat for a long time, staring at the blank television screen. My reflection looked like someone mid-sentence. Later, I found myself writing again. Not jokes this time, but small observations. The way the streetlight flickers exactly twice before turning off. The sound of a passing train that makes the window hum. The feeling of being both the punchline and the silence after it. Maybe that's what confession really is. Learning to tell the truth without waiting for laughter. On Friday, I went to the bank. Lydia met me with a polite smile and handed me the final papers. Her pen was smooth, her tone neutral. "You're all set," she said. I signed, each letter a small surrender. When she handed me a copy, she added, "He wanted you to have an easy process." I thanked her. The words tasted metallic. Outside, I stood on the sidewalk with the folder in my hand. The wind picked up, scattering a few leaves across the parking lot. I watched them spin, aimless but still moving forward. I thought of the coat again, the one made of jokes and pride and noise. Maybe this was me finally taking it off, piece by piece, standing bare in the draft, learning that warmth and truth don't always come together. That night, I placed the folder on the kitchen counter and turned off the light. The house was quiet again, not waiting or accusing, just existing. I traced the rim of my glass, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator. Somewhere far off, a dog barked and a car door closed. Life, steady and unbothered. I whispered to the dark, "You are not a shrine." And for the first time, I almost believed it. I packed a box of his cups and left them by the door like a peace offering. He came by while I was at work and took them without a note. The house sounded bigger after. I keep catching myself touching my side and feeling nothing but skin over a bad idea. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was finally honest. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.